The auction hall on the planet Khazar was filled with excited chatter and the sound of clinking credits. Aliens from every corner of the galaxy had gathered for one purpose: to buy and sell. The air was thick with tension as beings from all races observed the event, eager to make a deal. Merchants, warlords, and wealthy buyers filled the seats, each waiting for the next item to be brought to the stage. On the raised platform, a man stood, his voice booming across the room as he announced, "The next sale, next up, a rare specimen. Young, strong, and ready to serve." He gestured to a group of alien guards who pushed forward a small, fragile-looking woman. Her clothes were tattered, her skin pale from what looked like weeks of captivity. She stumbled slightly as she was pushed onto the stage, her eyes scanning the crowd nervously. Her name was Lyra. She belonged to a peaceful race known for their intelligence, not their strength. Her people had never been warriors, and they had no ability to fight back when the invaders came. She had seen her family torn apart in an attack by a ruthless alien species. Lyra had been captured and brought here to be sold to the highest bidder. As she stood there shivering, the auctioneer's voice rang out again. "We'll start the bidding at 5 credits. A small price for such a delicate little thing," he said, his tone mocking. The crowd's laughter echoed through the hall. Lyra's face flushed with embarrassment. She had heard the whispers in the crowd as she was led onto the stage. 5 credits? "She's useless," one of the bidders sneered. "A weakling. She's hardly worth the space she takes up." More laughter followed. The alien merchants, who were used to dealing in powerful warriors and skilled slaves, turned away in disgust. They saw no value in Lyra, just another defeated, helpless being with no real use to anyone. To them, she was a failure, not worth their time. As the laughter continued, Lyra stood still, her heart racing. She had been through so much, but the one thing she held on to was her hope that she would survive, hope that someone would see her for more than just a weak, helpless slave. But no one was looking at her with any kind of pity or understanding. They were all laughing at her misfortune, and she couldn't help but feel a deep sadness. She had been reduced to a mere object to be bought and sold. This was her life now: no family, no home, just the cold, heartless galaxy watching her fall. The auctioneer moved on, continuing his calls as he tried to encourage higher bids. 5 credits, he shouted again, his voice filled with impatience. "Who will bid 5 credits for this poor soul?" Then something unexpected happened. A man in the back of the room stood up. At first, no one paid him any attention. He wasn't dressed in the extravagant robes of the wealthy buyers, nor did he have the aura of a powerful warlord. He wore simple clothes, a basic tunic and boots that had clearly seen better days. His face was rugged, and his eyes seemed to scan the room with quiet intensity. The crowd paused, noticing the human figure standing at the back. Murmurs rippled through the auction hall. "Who is this?" one of the bidders whispered. "Is he serious?" Sam, the human standing in the back of the hall, didn't flinch at the stares. He wasn't wealthy, not by any means, but he had something that most people in the galaxy didn't: an understanding of what it meant to struggle, to fight for survival. He wasn't here for power or prestige. He was here because he saw something in Lyra that no one else did. When the crowd turned its attention to him, Sam stepped forward slowly, his gaze never leaving the stage. He raised his hand, signaling that he wished to place a bid. The auctioneer, who had been growing impatient, looked down at Sam and snorted in disbelief. You wish to buy this weakling? What could you possibly want with her?" he asked, a sneer forming on his face. Sam's eyes met the auctioneer's, calm and steady. "I'll offer 5 credits, he said simply, the auctioneer's face twisted in confusion. 5 credits? You must be joking. No one here wants this useless creature." The crowd fell silent. No one could believe what they were hearing. Here was a human, standing in the back of the hall, offering 5 credits for something everyone else had dismissed as worthless. Sam wasn't a powerful leader, a warlord, or a merchant. He was just a man who had lived a life full of hardships. But he wasn't laughing, and he wasn't turning away. He stepped forward because he saw something different in Lyra, something that everyone else had overlooked. The crowd began to murmur, and the auctioneer hesitated for a moment. Well, he said, clearing his throat. It seems we have a buyer after all. 5 credits, then, to this. Human. With that, the auction was concluded and Lyra was sold. As the guards moved to release her from the stage, she looked up at Sam. He was the only one who had stepped forward, the only one who hadn't laughed at her. Her heart skipped a beat as she wondered what he saw in her. Was she really worth more than just 5 credits? What did he expect from her? As Sam approached her, he offered a simple nod. I'll make sure you're treated with respect, he sighed quietly. And for the first time since her capture, Lyra felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Lyra sat silently in the corner of Sam's small ship, trying to understand her new reality. The laughter and mocking stares from the auction hall still echoed in her mind. How could anyone think she was worth so little? 5 credits? That was all she was sold for. As the ship's engines hummed, Sam walked over to her. He had a kind smile, but his eyes were serious, as if he understood something deeper about her situation. Lyra looked up at him, unsure of what to expect. Was he just like the others, pretending to care for her, or was he truly different? Don't worry, Sam said softly. I'm not going to treat you like a slave. You're free to do as you like. You're not some object to be bought or sold, Lyra blinked in surprise. Her whole life had been spent under the rule of others. She had never known freedom. She had never had a choice. But here was a man, a human, who wasn't looking at her as a tool to be used. He wasn't interested in her power or her appearance. He didn't care about the cruel world that had thrown her into this situation. All he cared about was offering her a chance to be more than what others had made her out to be. I don't know what to do, Lyra said quietly, her voice trembling with uncertainty. I don't know how to be anything but weak. Sam shook his head, sitting down next to her. I don't think you're weak. I think you just haven't been given the chance to show who you really are. Lyra had never been told something like that before. She had always been told she was useless, that she was weak, and that she had no value. But Sam saw something else in her, something hidden deep beneath the surface. As they traveled through the stars, Sam began to teach her the basics of survival in space. It wasn't much at first. He showed her how to repair basic systems on the ship and how to handle small tasks like cooking and cleaning. But every day he treated her with respect and encouraged her to do things on her own. Little by little, she started to gain confidence. The more Lyra learned, the more she realized how much her people's true strength was in their intelligence. While they were not built for battle, they were incredibly capable of solving problems and creating new ideas. Lyra's people had always been peaceful, using their brains rather than their fists to survive. Yet, in the eyes of others, that intelligence was seen as weakness, as something to be exploited or ignored. Sam had a different view. He valued the sharpness of her mind, the way she could think quickly and find solutions in the most difficult of situations. As the days passed, he gave her more responsibilities on the ship. She helped him with navigation and repairs, learning new things with each task. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt like she had a purpose. She was no longer just a helpless prisoner or a weakling to be laughed at. She was someone who had value, someone who could contribute to something greater than herself. And it wasn't just about what she could do for Sam. It was about what she could do for herself. One evening, as they sat together in the ship's cockpit, Sam looked at her and smiled. You're doing great, he said. I'm impressed with how quickly you've picked things up. Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. Thank you, she replied, her voice more confident than before. I never thought I'd be able to do anything like this. You'd be surprised what you're capable of when you're given a chance, Sam said. Sometimes people just need someone to believe in them. Lyra glanced out of the window, staring at the stars that stretched endlessly before them. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel so alone. She wasn't sure where the road ahead would lead, but she knew one thing. She wasn't the same person who had stepped onto the auction block. She was stronger, smarter, and more capable than she had ever thought possible. As the days turned into weeks, Sam and Lyra's bond grew. They shared stories of their pasts, both of them finding comfort in knowing they weren't alone. Sam told her about his own struggles, how he had come from a place where life was hard, but he had learned to push forward. Lyra listened, feeling a connection to him in a way she hadn't expected. "I've been through a lot too," Lyra admitted one evening, her voice soft. "My people, they're not fighters. We don't know how to defend ourselves against those who want to hurt us." "That doesn't make you weak," Sam said firmly. "It makes you smart. You just need the right tools to protect yourself." Lyra smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope inside her. Sam was right. Maybe she wasn't weak. Maybe she was just waiting for the chance to prove herself. As the journey continued, Lyra's confidence grew with every step. She was learning more and more, taking on tasks that once seemed impossible. She still wasn't sure if she could ever be truly strong in the way the galaxy expected her to be, but she was beginning to understand that strength didn't always have to look the same. Strength could come from within, from the mind, from the will, to keep going even when everything seemed against you. Sam's ship traveled through the quiet emptiness of space, and the rhythmic hum of the engines was a constant background noise. For Lyra, it had become a familiar sound, one that brought a strange comfort. As the days turned into weeks, she continued to learn from Sam. Growing more confident in herself and her abilities, they had stopped at a small, uninhabited moon to rest and gather supplies. The moon was barren, but it had a small settlement of traders who used it as a base for exchanging goods. Sam needed a few parts for the ship, so he left Lyra behind, giving her some time to relax and enjoy the peace. It was rare for them to find a place without danger or someone looking to cause trouble. Lyra sat outside the ship, watching the barren landscape stretch out before her. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the rocky surface. For the first time in a long time, Lyra allowed herself to just be. She didn't have to hide. She didn't have to pretend. She was free, and that freedom felt more real. With each passing day, while Sam was away, Lyra wandered around the small settlement. She wasn't used to being outside the ship for long periods, but there was something about this place that made her feel safe. The people here were not like the ones she had encountered before. They were kind and didn't judge her. She felt like she could actually breathe for the first time in a long while. It was then that trouble found her. A group of rough-looking aliens approached her, their eyes scanning her with curiosity. Lyra could feel the tension in the air as they stopped in front of her. They weren't from the settlement. They were strangers, and they didn't look friendly. One of them, a tall creature with a long, sharp nose and green skin, stepped forward. "Hey, little one," he said in a deep voice. "We've been watching you. You're the one who was sold for 5 credits, right?" "What's a weakling like you doing here?" Lyra's heart began to race. She had dealt with similar insults before, but something about the way this group looked at her made her feel uneasy. She stood up straighter, trying to keep her voice calm. "I'm just passing through," she said, keeping her distance. "I'm not looking for trouble," the alien with the sharp nose laughed. "Trouble? No, we just thought you might be a good target for some fun. A weak little creature like you is perfect for the taking." Lyra's mind raced. She wasn't a fighter, and these aliens were bigger and stronger than her. But Sam's words echoed in her head. Strength doesn't always come from the body. Sometimes it comes from the mind. She knew she had to do something. She couldn't let herself be treated like this again. Lyra looked around quickly, scanning her surroundings. There was a small piece of metal lying on the ground nearby, a broken tool left behind by one of the traders. It wasn't much, but it could be enough to defend herself. Without thinking, she grabbed the piece of metal and swung it toward the alien closest to her. The move was quick and unexpected, and the alien stumbled backward, shocked by her sudden action. The other aliens hesitated, surprised by her boldness. "Didn't expect that, did you?" Lyra said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "I'm not as weak as you think." The aliens exchanged confused looks, unsure of how to react. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood her ground. The tool in her hand was shaking, but she knew she couldn't back down now. She was no longer the helpless alien from the auction block. She was someone who had the strength to stand up for herself. just as the group began to move toward her. A loud voice interrupted. "Back off!" Sam's voice boomed from behind them. He appeared, rushing toward the group with a determined look on his face. His eyes locked onto Lyra, and then he turned to face the aliens. "She said she didn't want trouble." "You'd better listen." The aliens, seeing the human approach with authority, took a step back. Sam wasn't armed, but his presence alone seemed to make them rethink their actions. They muttered something under their breath before turning and walking away. Lyra exhaled, her body suddenly feeling weak from the rush of adrenaline. She dropped the metal tool, realizing just how close she had come to being hurt again. But something else was growing inside her, a new sense of pride. She had stood up for herself. She hadn't waited for someone else to do it. "Are you okay?" Sam asked, his voice soft but firm as he knelt beside her. His eyes were filled with concern, but there was also something else, pride. He was proud of her. I'm fine," Lyra said, still breathing heavily. I didn't want to be afraid anymore." Sam smiled. "You did great. You didn't just survive. You fought back. That's more than most people would have done." Lyra looked at the ground, her mind spinning with the realization of what had just happened. She had fought back, and she had won. For the first time, she felt powerful, not because of her strength, but because of her courage. The rest of the day passed in a blur, but Lyra couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. She wasn't the weak, helpless alien anymore. She had proven to herself that she was capable. She was not just a survivor, she was someone who could fight for herself and take control of her own destiny. And for the first time in a long time, Lyra truly believed that she could be more than just a forgotten slave. She could be a force to be reckoned with. As the ship left the barren moon and soared back into space, Lyra sat by the window, looking out at the vast stretch of stars. The galaxy was endless, a beautiful and terrifying place. For the first time, she didn't feel so small in the great expanse of it. She was beginning to understand that her place in the universe wasn't defined by the 5 credits she had been sold for, or by the people who thought she was useless. Sam was at the controls of the ship, his eyes focused on the path ahead. He glanced over at Lyra, who was still lost in thought. "How are you feeling?" Sam asked, his voice gentle. Lyra turned her gaze away from the stars and looked at him. "Strange," she said quietly. "I never thought I'd feel like this. Like I actually have some control over my life. I'm not just running from the past anymore." Sam smiled, his face lighting up with pride. "That's good to hear. You're stronger than you know, Lyra." The words stuck with her. Stronger than I know. She had heard those words before, but now they meant something different. They were not just words of encouragement, they were the truth. The more she learned, the more she realized how much strength she had hidden inside, strength that was waiting to be awakened. Sam's voice broke into her thoughts. "We're heading to a new planet to meet a contact. It's a little dangerous, but I'm confident we can handle it." Lyra turned to him, surprised. "Dangerous? What kind of danger?" "Nothing we can't handle," Sam said with a grin. "But stay alert. You never know what could happen in places like these." The planet they were heading toward, Talaris, was known for its rough environment and the kinds of people who lived there. It was a place where mercenaries, pirates, and other criminals gathered, trading goods and services in the shadow of the law. Sam had dealt with these types before, and he knew how to navigate the dangerous situations they often found themselves in. As they approached Talaris, the ship's sensors began to ping with warnings. It was a sign of something unusual, a sign that their arrival hadn't gone unnoticed. "Looks like we've got company," Sam said, his expression turning serious. "We'll need to be cautious. There are always people looking to make trouble." "On this planet," Lyra nodded, feeling her heart race slightly. She wasn't used to these kinds of situations, but Sam had taught her to stay calm, to think through things. He had taught her that she could handle more than she thought. The ship descended toward the planet's surface, and as they touched down in a small, hidden docking bay, Sam quickly turned to Lyra. "Stay close and stay sharp. We're not here to make friends, just to do business." Lyra felt the familiar stirrings of fear, but she pushed it aside. She was not the same person who had been sold for 5 credits. She was stronger, and she knew how to protect herself. She had proven that as they made their way out of the ship, a group of rough-looking aliens approached them. Their faces were hardened, their bodies covered in armor, and their eyes narrowed as they sized Sam and Lyra up. One of them stepped forward, his voice cold and gruff. "You're in the wrong place, human," the alien said. "This is our territory." "You're not welcome here." Sam stood tall, his posture confident. "I'm here for a meeting with Rannox. He knows I'm coming. You can either let us through, or we can have a problem." The alien sneered, clearly not impressed. "Rannox? Don't make me laugh. He's not the one in charge here." Before Sam could respond, Lyra stepped forward. She felt the tension in the air, the pressure building. She knew they couldn't let these aliens intimidate them. She had learned from Sam, and now it was her turn to stand up. "We don't want trouble," Lyra said, her voice steady. "But we're not backing down. If you want to stop us, you'll have to do more than talk." The alien's eyes flickered with surprise at her response. He had expected weakness like everyone else, but Lyra wasn't the weak alien they thought she was. She had learned to think quickly, to use her mind to solve problems, and she knew exactly what to do. For a moment the alien hesitated, then without warning he reached for his weapon. But before he could pull it from its holster, Lyra moved quickly, grabbing a piece of metal from the nearby crates. She swung it at his hand, knocking the weapon from his grasp. The alien growled, his eyes flashing with fury, but before he could make another move, Sam was there, his presence commanding. "That's enough," he said firmly. "You'll get no trouble from us today." The other aliens, seeing the situation turn in their favor, took a step back. They hadn't expected Lyra to fight back, and they certainly hadn't expected her to do it so effectively. The leader of the group glared at them, but his anger was tempered by a reluctant respect. "This isn't over," he muttered. "But you're lucky today." With that, the group retreated, leaving Sam and Lyra standing in the middle of the docking bay. Sam turned to Lyra, a look of admiration on his face. "You did great. I knew you could handle it." Lyra smiled, feeling a sense of pride swell in her chest. She had faced down danger, and she had come out on top. She wasn't the weak alien anymore. She wasn't just someone to be dismissed and discarded. She was stronger than she had ever realized. As they walked toward the building where their contact waited, Lyra felt something new inside her. It wasn't just the thrill of standing up for herself. It was the confidence that came from knowing she could face whatever challenges the galaxy threw at her, and she would win. The dusty streets of Teleris were alive with movement, the sound of traders shouting their wares and the hum of various ships taking off or landing in the distance. It wasn't a place of beauty, but it had a certain energy, raw and untamed. For Lyra, it was a reminder of the dangerous world outside the safety of Sam's ship, but it was also a place that offered new opportunities. Sam had arranged a meeting with Rannox, a contact he had worked with in the past. Rannox was known for his connections in the black market, and he was the key to getting the rare parts Sam needed for the ship. But meeting with someone like Rannox on a planet like Teleris wasn't ever simple. It was a risk. As they approached the meeting place, a dimly lit alleyway tucked between 2 crumbling buildings, Sam's expression turned serious. Lyra, who had grown accustomed to the unpredictable nature of their travels, stayed close to him. They couldn't afford to be careless now. She had learned that quickly. "You stay behind me," Sam said, his voice low. "If anything goes wrong, stay out of sight. I'll handle this." Lyra nodded. She had trusted Sam since the moment they met, and she knew he had experience in situations like this. But she also knew that she couldn't stay in the shadows forever. She had proven to herself that she was capable of more than just following orders. She had been trained by Sam, and now she had her own strength to rely on. They reached the entrance of the alley, where a figure stood in the shadows. Rannox, a large, burly alien with a heavy coat and dark, calculating eyes, stepped forward to greet them. "Sam," Rannox said, his voice gruff but not unfriendly. "It's been a while." "You?" "Always pick the fun places to meet." Sam gave a half smile. I've been keeping busy. Got a job for you? Always, Ranix replied. Always something. But I'll need payment up front. You know how it works. Sam's eyes narrowed slightly. I've got credits, the parts. You know what I need? Ranix nodded and motioned for them to follow him deeper into the alley, past the trash bins and broken-down crates. The further they went, the more Lyra felt the weight of the danger around them. This wasn't just a simple trade. This was a meeting between two people with agendas, and Lyra wasn't sure where she fit into it. Sam trusted Ranix, but trust was a fragile thing in places like this. As they entered a rundown building, Ranix stopped and turned to face them. This place is neutral ground, but don't get any ideas. If you try anything funny, it'll be the last thing you do. Sam didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stood still, observing the area. It was clear he knew exactly how to handle himself in this kind of environment. But Lyra could feel the tension building. She wasn't sure what it was, but something didn't sit right. Suddenly, the door behind them slammed open. A group of heavily armed mercenaries burst in, their weapons drawn and their faces masked. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. Sam stepped in front of her instinctively, but it was clear that this was a trap. They had walked right into it. Don't move, one of the mercenaries ordered, his voice harsh. You're not leaving here with anything. Ranix is ours now. Lyra's pulse raced. She looked at Sam, and for the first time, she saw a flash of concern in his eyes. He was calculating, thinking quickly, trying to find a way out of the situation. But the mercenaries had them cornered, and there was no clear escape route. We need to leave, Sam said quietly to Lyra, his voice barely above a whisper. Get behind me, and don't do anything unless I say. Lyra nodded, but she didn't want to hide. She didn't want to stand back and wait for someone else to act. She had fought before. She had proven that she could take control. She wasn't going to let Sam do this alone. As the mercenaries advanced, Lyra grabbed a heavy metal rod from a nearby shelf. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She didn't wait for Sam's signal. Without thinking, she lunged forward, swinging the rod at the nearest mercenary. The shock on his face was immediate as the blow landed with force, knocking him back. The other mercenaries froze for a moment, unsure of what had just happened. But it was enough of a distraction for Sam to act. He grabbed a nearby blaster from one of the mercenaries and fired at the ceiling, causing sparks to fly and smoke to pour from the broken lights above them. Get down! Sam shouted, pulling Lyra behind a crate. The mercenaries were disoriented, trying to regain their footing. Sam moved quickly, taking down one of them with a well-aimed shot. Lyra, still holding the metal rod, swung again, knocking another mercenary to the ground. She wasn't fighting to kill. She was fighting to survive, just like she had learned from Sam. The battle was fast, intense, and over in moments. In the aftermath, the building was silent. The mercenaries had either been knocked out or fled. Ranix, who had been watching from the side, finally spoke. Well, I'll be damned, he said with a grin. Didn't think you had it in you. Sam gave him a look of approval. We're not here for trouble, Ranix. We just need the parts. Ranix nodded, his expression turning more serious. You'll get them. I respect someone who can hold their own. And you've got a fighter on your hands. Lyra couldn't help but feel a sense of pride swelling inside her. It wasn't the first time she had fought, but this time it had felt different. She hadn't waited for someone to save her. She had acted on her own, and it had worked. Sam placed a hand on her shoulder as they walked out of the building, the parts in hand. You did great, he said, his voice filled with pride. Lyra smiled, her heart swelling with a sense of accomplishment. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living strong, capable, and ready to face whatever came next. The days after their encounter with the mercenaries on Tolaris were filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. Sam and Lyra had successfully retrieved the parts they needed, and the ship was now in better condition. Yet something had changed in both of them. For Lyra, it wasn't just the parts or the success of their mission, it was the confidence she had gained from standing up for herself and from seeing just how much she could do on her own. As Sam piloted the ship through the stars, Lyra stood by the window, looking out at the endless stretch of space. The vastness of it no longer felt so overwhelming. It had become her home, her place of growth. She had no idea where they were going next, but for the first time in her life, that uncertainty didn't scare her. It excited her. "You're quiet," Sam said from behind her, his voice breaking the silence. Lyra turned to face him, offering a small smile. "Just thinking," she replied. "It's strange, you know? I've spent so much of my life being afraid, running from what was happening to me. But now I feel like I'm finally moving forward. Like I'm in control of my own future." Sam smiled, proud of her progress. He had seen it too, the change in her. The shy, quiet alien he had met on that auction block was now someone who could face danger, fight back, and make decisions. She was learning to rely on herself, and that was the greatest lesson he could have taught her. "I'm glad you feel that way," Sam said. "You've come a long way. But remember, it's not about doing everything alone. You've got me and I've got you. We're a team." Lyra nodded, feeling a sense of warmth spread through her. For so long she had felt isolated, abandoned by her people, and cast aside by the galaxy. But now she had someone who cared about her, someone who believed in her. It was a feeling she was still learning to fully accept. The next stop was a planet on the edge of the galaxy, a place Sam had heard about through a contact he had worked with in the past. The planet was known for being a hub of trade, where ships from all over the galaxy stopped to refuel and rest. But it also had a darker side: illegal markets, shady dealings, and dangerous people. Sam had learned the hard way not to trust everyone. But he was hopeful that this trip would be different. They needed supplies, and this planet seemed like the best place to find what they needed. As they landed, the air outside the ship was thick and humid, the kind of atmosphere that clung to your skin. The bustling marketplace was crowded with alien merchants, travelers, and workers going about their business. There was a constant hum of activity, a mixture of different languages and the sounds of traders shouting to make their sales. Sam and Lara stepped off the ship, blending in with the crowd as they made their way through the market. "Stay close," Sam said quietly, scanning the area. "This place can get dangerous if you're not careful." Lara nodded, keeping her eyes open. She had grown more aware of her surroundings over the past few weeks, and Sam's training had taught her to trust her instincts. She was no longer the same fearful woman who had stepped into the auction hall. She had learned to be cautious, to read the people around her, and to know when something wasn't right. As they walked deeper into the market, they passed stalls filled with strange, exotic items, goods from every corner of the galaxy. Some were beautiful, some were unsettling, and some were downright bizarre. Lyra's curiosity got the best of her, and she stopped to examine a small piece of jewelry displayed on one of the stalls. "This is nice," she said, picking up the delicate necklace. It was made of shimmering metal, unlike anything she had seen before. "How much?" The merchant, a small bird-like alien, looked at her with a shrewd eye. "For you, my dear, 50 credits. Lyra's heart sank. She had never had that much money before, and the idea of spending so much on something as simple as a necklace seemed ridiculous. But there was something about it, something that felt special. Maybe it was the idea of having something beautiful in her life for once, something that wasn't tied to her past. Sam saw the necklace in her hand and smiled, walking over to the stall. "How much for that?" he asked, his voice casual. 50 credits, the merchant replied quickly. Eyeing Sam with suspicion, Sam reached into his pocket and pulled out a few credits. Without a word, he handed them to the merchant, taking the necklace from Lyra's hand and placing it around her neck. "For you," Sam said with a wink. Lyra was stunned. She had never expected something like that, especially not from Sam. She touched the necklace lightly, a smile tugging at her lips. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice full of gratitude. Sam grinned. "You deserve it. You've earned it." As they continued through the market, Lyra couldn't help but think about how far she had come. The past was still there, but it no longer defined her. She had faced danger, had fought for her survival, and now she was beginning to understand that her worth wasn't determined by others. It was something she could define for herself. Later, as they made their way back to the ship, Sam turned to her. "What do you think?" he asked. "Ready for the next adventure?" Lyra looked up at the stars, feeling a sense of excitement bubbling inside her. She didn't know what the future held, but she was ready for it. No matter what challenges came their way, she knew she could handle them. She was no longer the weak alien sold for 5 credits. She was strong, capable, and ready to face the universe. "I'm ready," she said, her voice full of determination. And with that, they boarded the ship and set off once again, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. The stars outside the ship sparkled like diamonds scattered across a velvet sky. Sam sat at the controls, his eyes fixed on the coordinates ahead. It had been a long journey, but the bond between him and Lyra had only grown stronger. She was no longer the shy alien woman who had been sold for 5 credits. She had transformed into someone who could stand on her own, someone who could think, fight, and adapt to whatever challenges the galaxy threw at her. Lyra stood by the window, her gaze drifting over the endless space. The journey had changed her in ways she hadn't expected. She had learned so much from Sam, not just about surviving in the galaxy, but about herself. She was stronger, more capable, and more confident. She had faced fears, fought back against those who had tried to take advantage of her, and, most importantly, she had learned to trust herself. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a victim. She felt like an equal, like someone who had a purpose. And that purpose was still unfolding. "Where are we going now?" Lyra asked, turning away from the window to face Sam. "New planet," Sam replied, his voice calm. "It's not far. A peaceful place." "Thought we could take a break, rest a little?" Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Peaceful?" "After everything we've been through, I'm not sure I know what that means anymore." Sam chuckled, glancing at her with a smile. "It's different. No danger, no fighting, just a place to relax for a while." Lyra smiled back, though she couldn't help but feel a little uncertain. The quiet life had always seemed out of reach. For her, she had grown accustomed to the unpredictability of their travels, to the moments of danger and excitement. But the thought of rest, of peace, was appealing. Maybe it was time to slow down for a bit. The ship continued its journey through space, and Lyra found herself deep in thought. She had come so far from the woman who had been sold for a few credits. She had learned to face each challenge with courage, to embrace her own strengths, and to realize that her past didn't define her. She had met people who had tried to use her, take advantage of her, but she had survived them all. And now she was free. The freedom was a powerful feeling. As the hours passed, Sam brought the ship down to a lush, green planet. The surface was covered in forests, and the air felt fresh and clean as they touched down in a quiet valley. The ship settled on a grassy field, and for the first time in a long time, Lyra stepped outside without fear, without the weight of the past dragging her down. The planet, called Lumina, was known for its natural beauty and peaceful atmosphere. It was a place where travelers could rest, recharge, and find solace. Lyra felt an unfamiliar calm settle over her as she stepped onto the soft grass. The scent of fresh flowers filled the air, and the sky above was a perfect blue. It was almost like something out of a dream. "Wow," Lyra said softly, looking around in awe. "It's beautiful here," Sam nodded, taking a deep breath. "I thought you'd like it. It's a peaceful place. We can stay for as long as we need." For the next few days, they explored the planet, taking in the sights and sounds of Lumina. They walked through the forests, sat by calm rivers, and spent quiet evenings under the stars. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to relax, to truly enjoy the calmness around her. It felt strange, but it was also wonderful. The peace of the planet was a reminder of everything she had fought for and everything she had earned. One evening, as the sun began to set, Sam and Lyra sat on a small hill looking out at the horizon. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, and the world around them was still, peaceful. It was hard to believe that only a few months ago, Lyra had been nothing more than a prisoner, sold off for a handful of credits. Now she was free, and she was starting to understand what that truly meant. Lyra looked at Sam, her expression thoughtful. "You know," she began, "I never thought I'd be here." Not just on this planet, but in this place in my life. I was always running, always hiding, but now I'm starting to understand that I don't have to run anymore. I don't have to be afraid. Sam smiled, his eyes filled with understanding. You've come a long way. I'm proud of you, Lyra. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest at his words. For so long she had doubted herself, believing that she was nothing more than a victim of circumstances. But now she knew that wasn't true. She had fought for her freedom, and she had earned it. She had learned to trust herself, to believe in her own strength. And that was something no one could take away from her. I'm proud of me too, Lyra said softly, a smile crossing her face. I never thought I'd say that, but I am. The two sat in silence for a while, watching the stars appear in the sky above. It was a peaceful moment, one that Lyra knew she would hold on to. The galaxy was still a vast, unpredictable place, full of dangers and challenges. But for the first time, Lyra was no longer afraid. She had the strength to face whatever came next. As the night settled in and the stars glittered overhead, Sam turned to her with a serious expression. What do you think? Are you ready for whatever comes next? Lyra looked at him, her heart full of confidence. I'm ready. Whatever the galaxy has in store, I can handle it. I'm not afraid anymore. And as they sat there, surrounded by the peace of Lumina, Lyra knew that her journey was far from over. But she was no longer the woman who had been sold for 5 credits. She was someone who could shape her own destiny, someone who could stand tall and face whatever came her way. And with Sam by her side, she knew she was ready for whatever the stars had in store.